I facilitate conversations between ourselves here and our loved ones in spirit. Sometimes they say something so very profound, or funny, or thought-provoking, or enlightening. Let me share an example with you.
Hello everyone. Today I have Rhonda with me. She is the mum of Julia, and Rhonda recently had a live conversation with Julia, and Julia came out with something quite incredible very early on. Julia's been back in spirit for over 3 years now, I think, hasn't she?
Yes, yes, it was 3 years in July.
Right, and she started this live conversation by telling her mum that she loves the way that she's grieving. And I've never heard anybody come through and say something like that. And I thought it was quite remarkable. And I want, Rhonda, if you can just tell me your thoughts when you heard Julia say that to you.
Yeah, well, I was pretty surprised that she said that because I had never even thought that someone could be happy with the way that I was grieving, first of all. Um, but then, I was thinking about my grief, and I mean, since the summertime of this year, I think it has changed. And I think that what I've realized is that it's just this ongoing process that I'm going to be working on probably for the rest of my life. And I've come to accept that grief is an emotion. I believe that is an emotion, just like happiness and sadness and joy and um, the other many emotions that there are out there. And I think that grief is an emotion that I don't want to say I've perfected managing it, but I am working on it.
It's interesting
And
when you quote grief in that way, and I think of feelings because it's us humans here that label these emotions as good and bad. We label sadness as bad and happiness as good, and in some ways, grief gets a bad rap in the spiritual world because it's viewed as something that brings your vibration down. If you're on a spiritual journey, would people think if you're grieving that you can't have a very good connection and so on? Whereas really, it is simply just as you said, it is something else that we experience. And I think, as you said, from a parental perspective, when it's a child on the other side, I'm in the same boat really as you with regarding the fact that little moments of grief in whatever way, maybe a touch of sadness or an intense missing of their physical presence, it could bubble up here and there at some point for the rest of my life. And certainly for me, my peace has come by just accepting that status quo. Um,
right, yeah, I understand grief is going to bubble up from time to time, and I would assume it's going to happen for the rest of my life. But just like being joyful and being happy, those also will come and go. I mean, we can't be happy every day, all day for weeks and months at a time. So I imagine that grief is the same way. It'll come and it'll go. As time goes on, I think that um, it's easier to manage, but that comes with time. And I think that what Julie was saying, I'm happy with your grief, is that my realization that this is it's happening, and I'm going with it, and I'm going with the ups and the downs of the day to day. And sometimes I do feel sad, and it doesn't mean that my vibration is going to be low and I can't have a good connection. Actually, some of my best connections are when I sit and I'm talking to her quietly in my mind, or I just have these conversations with her in my mind, and I know that she's there. And so that really does help. So I'm not quite sure about the having a lot low vibration. I think that, yes, it does get low from time to time, but I think that just like everything else, our vibrations, our energy, and energy fluctuates and goes up and down and all around.
I think the way you're embracing your grief, though, I mean, that saying of grief and joy can coexist is absolutely true. It may take a while, I think, especially for a parent to feel joyful moments again. I remember the first time still clearly that I laughed for the first time after Tommy accident. I kind of stopped halfway through laughing, horrified that I was actually laughing over something. I was actually laughing over the little dog, something our little puppy had done. That very first time. But you, as you expand spiritually, as you embrace the greater reality, kind of puts your grief in a different perspective. And we are here to have the human experience. Grief is part of the human experience. And like many of the more challenging emotions that we can have, they are the ones that have the most growth potential. And I think, Julia saying that about your grief, she's probably reflecting the fact that you've grown a lot from the way that you've handled your grief.
Yeah, I think, it's hard to say what she really is thinking, but from the live conversation that we had, to know that she's happy with my grief and that uh, she's listening to me and watching me and knowing exactly what I'm doing is just comfort in itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, very much so. Actually, we should finish on something else that Julia said during that conversation, which had us both laughing, because it's coming up to Christmas. Julia mentioned the stockings, and you kind of nodded when I said, "Oh, she's talking about stockings here," and then I said she's talking about them being in the hall, and you said indeed they were in the hall, and Julia then said that you need to hang them up.
I, that was a very funny moment. Just to give some background. Yes, it is holiday time. It's November or December, actually, December, sorry. And I have been decorating more so than I ever have before. And the stockings are a little bit of a tough thing for me because, one is for her, obviously. I never got rid of hers. And I got frustrated and I left them at the end of the banister thinking, oh, I'll get around to it. But here she is letting me know that I still haven't hung them up and they needed to be hung up. And she was aware of it. So that was kind of funny because I think that's something that she would have said to me if she was still here in physical. But knowing that she's even though she's not here in physical, she's still watching me and she's still wanting to remind me to do things like that. So in the end, I did hang them up.
You did.
I did hang them up. So
Great. I'm sure you've made Julia very happy. Rhonda, I just want to thank you for coming in today and sharing your thoughts on what Julia said about your grief. Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing.
oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm looking forward to doing it again sometime.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you, Sally.